respect. It's JC Allen. JC, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, guys. Happy to be here. Happy to chop up a little Carolina Panthers Bucks talk. Both of these teams kind of struggling as of late, so it should be an interesting matchup.
All right, let's get right to it. CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, or sorry, we're already that's where we're at. Okay. Right. No, what is this? This is week 7, guys.
Yeah.
Yep. 7.
Wow.
Carolina Panthers. Yeah, we thought the Carolina Panthers were going to have some fight in them this year. Maybe that Baker Mayfield bring a little tenacity and grit, and it's just been the opposite of that. So we're sitting here at 1-5 already at this point, saying crash into those rocks over there. We don't really have a choice at this point. But the Bucs have not had an easy season to this point yet. Tom Brady continues to be a focal point of what the heck is going on with him. He dominates the conversation, goes to Robert Kraft's wedding in the middle of the week. And also, just really the real story is not Tom Brady and his commitment probably to the Bucs, but Julio Jones is made of glass. One play gets hurt. Everybody's hurt on that team. But you guys have been here before and turned it around. So how bad is it for the Bucs, or is this just something you guys are battling through?
I think it's just something they're battling through. You know, you look at Julio Jones. Yeah, he's dealing with yet another injury, but this isn't an injury that he suffered like the past ones. You know, most of these were soft tissue hamstring injuries. This one is where he actually put his body on the line, diving for a catch and partially tore that PCL. So, you know, the Bucs probably could have put him on short-term IR and then brought him back once he was feeling healthy. But I think part of the reason why they didn't is because, you know, depending on injuries stacking up at that position, he probably could go, but it's best to keep him out as long as you can, as long as you don't need him, let him be. I mean, the Bucs, even though they're dealing with some struggles, they're still playing for that December, November football. They're not playing for, you know, this week necessarily as much as they are, you know, for down the line and potentially in the playoffs. So, but I think there's a lot of things that are correctable. A lot of coaching mistakes that are correctable, a lot of execution errors, a lot of I mentioned this all last week, and I thought the Steelers game for them was a perfect game to get right, was with technique and fundamentals. It just seems like they're not playing with good communication, with good technique, and just basic football fundamentals that they should know how to play with because they've been doing it the last 2 years. So I don't think, you know, Tom going, you know, to Kraft's wedding. I mean, look at what the Pats did, and half the team was there this past week. So, I mean, I don't think I think that's just a scapegoat because of his enormous personality. You know, even Coach Bowles said there's a lot of players who get time off, get days off that we don't know about because they're not Tom's level. So I don't know if that's necessarily playing in. I mean, this guy is a master at compartmentalizing. He played when, you know, when his mom was dealing with cancer, and won a Super Bowl. He played when his dad was hospitalized with COVID and won a Super Bowl. So anything that's speculated off the field, I don't think is really that much of a huge deal going on behind the scenes. I just think they're not playing sound football, and that's something they need to get back to. And I think, you know, I thought last week was, but I think this week also provides another chance to potentially get back into the swing of things and start the turnaround. So
your team is 3-3 right now, correct? That's where you guys are sitting in the division?
Correct, yeah. Well,
so
in the conference, in the division, they're 2-0.
Right. But just, I mean, your record overall, you're 3-3. Correct. What would you say is the difference? I mean, I know it's still early. There's a lot of football left to be played. But what would you say is the difference between that team that went to the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl versus this team right now? What are your major concerns plaguing this Tampa Bay team? And, you know, is it more offensive and defensive? And where are those problems stemming from, you think?
I think the biggest thing right now is offensive line. You know, you've had 3 guys up and leaving free agency or retirement or get injured. You're looking at obviously Ali Marpet retired after making his first overdue Pro Bowl. Ryan Jensen gets injured on the second day of training camp, and then Alex Kappa left for the Bengals. Now, he hasn't looked good for the Bengals at all, and they got in Shaq Mason, who's looked pretty dang good. But you're starting every guy in that offensive line is starting next to somebody new. and building that chemistry, building that camaraderie, building that. It takes time. It takes reps to know what the other guy's going to do next to you without having to communicate it. We're just thinking, okay, on this look, he's going to do this, and without and just to play smooth and able to just go out there and execute at a high level. They're also starting a second-round rookie left guard, and Luke Gedeke, who's had some real struggles going against some of the best defensive linemen in the league so far. You know, he's had no shortage of between Kenny Clark, Chris Jones, Grady Jarrett, Cam Hayward. He's been piled on, and it doesn't get any easier with Derek Brown this week. So, I mean, that's been a real problem. Pressure's getting to Tom, and he's not. He's got the fastest release in the NFL, which has probably saved at least a handful of sacks, if not more. But the fact that teams know that they're going to be able to get pressure on him, they're playing more off coverage, they're leaving him checkdowns, which is why Leonard Fournette is one of the best. I think he's actually leading the team right now in receptions as a running back. He is leading the team in receptions right now because they're allowing those checkdowns because they know that Tom's not going to have enough time to hit those deep balls, which is why they're covering, double covering Mike Evans, etc. So there's definitely an issue there. And I think that's the biggest issue on the offense. On defense, they're getting away from their bread and butter. I mean, stopping the run is what the Bucs are known for over the last 3-4 years. And so far they've been not good at it, just to put quite frankly, whether it's up the middle, whether it's, quarterback containment issues, they've struggled, and until they get back into that, and then obviously injuries, injuries on the offense with wide receivers being in and out, Mike Evans being suspended, Cam Brate in and out with injuries, concussions, and dealing with a neck injury. Akeem Hicks, with a foot injury is still out for a while, might make his return this week. Now Logan Ryan's having surgery and going on injured reserve, and really part of the reason that made that Bucs team so dominant those first couple of games was because of that safety room. Having Logan Ryan, Mike Edwards, and Antoine Winfield Jr. in that defensive backfield allowed them to do so many different schematic things because all three of those players could play nickel, strong, or free safety. So it allows them to disguise so many different coverages. Now with a guy like Keanu Neal out there, he's more of that pure strong safety. You're not going to ask him to do a lot in coverage. You're not going to put him in a nickel situation. So there's that issue where they've lost some of that versatility on the back end. And now it looks like they're probably going to have to promote a guy like Nolan Turner. They're trying out D. Delaney, who's a cornerback there. He played free safety all last week against the Steelers and had some ups and downs, but that's probably, that's one of the biggest issues that have has occurred with the injuries that have popped up, and it's not letting them play the ball that they were playing earlier on in the season, and it's helped with their struggles.
Yeah. So first, let me go ahead and say thank you to Michael Davis, again, one of our patron saints on the C3 Panthers podcast. He donated $20. He said, "Hey Tony, have a Miller Lite on me. You guys have been killing it lately. Keep it up." I wanted to ask you a question, JC, if you would. One of the things that I think that the Bucs always tend to win on has been free agency. I think this year we could probably say it's got to be the first time that the free agency that the Bucs have had turns out to be really bad, right? You guys go and get Kyle Rudolph. That, unfortunately he can't even get on the field. You get obviously you have a lot of issues because you lose one of the best guards, or I guess best guards in the league by to free agency. A few injuries, get a couple of them out of the way as well. Right now, what is the upside you see to the Bucs team outside of having Tom Brady and maybe one of the most explosive receiving cores in the league?
I think the free agent class has got this big asterisk and question mark next to it because of the injuries. I mean, you look at Akeem Hicks already out injured, and we know he had some health issues in the past. Julio Jones, we know about his health issues, but already out with the partially torn PCL. You look at Russell Gage, who looked phenomenal in training camp. And even some of the guys in the team, Mike Edwards saying he's running routes that are uncoverable, looked really good in training camp, pulled his hammy. Then he's been battling through a litany of injuries, ankle, back, hamstring injuries still lingering. So, I mean, and then obviously now Logan Ryan's out with a foot injury. So injuries have not been kind. Kyle Rudolph just got outplayed straight as it is. He's been slowly regressing over the last couple of years. And I think they brought him in just to make sure that they had that veteran depth, but always hoped that he would have been beat out by a guy like Cade Otton, who they really liked and got in the 4th round, and he's been spectacular. Keith has been finding a role as a fullback, hybrid, tight end, H-back type role. So they utilize him. Plus, he's really good on special teams, and Rudolph doesn't play special teams. So, I wouldn't necessarily say Rudolph was a miss because he was more of like a late addition. Let's bring him in, during camp and see what he can do. So I think injuries has been the biggest obstacle for this, this free agent group. But, if you want to look to where this strength is besides Brady, obviously, and besides the wide receiving core, I still think they have a good, solid group of outside linebackers. I mean, you start on the outside with Joe Tryon-Shrinko, who had one of his better games now, coming into his own in his second year as a full-time starter. Had his best game against the Falcons, had a better game last week, even though he didn't get a sack. Shaq Barrett is still causing some mayhem, and on that sack that Antoine Winfield Jr. had, he was actually there first. I think they're still really good in the middle, even though Devin White's been playing with some ups and downs, some lapses in judgment, especially in coverage. But he's still one of the best, most dynamic blitzers, and he's a sideline-to-sideline player with that speed. And Levante David, I mean, you guys know Levante David, Luke Kuechly have always been back and forth, and who's better. And they both have very comparable stats. I think Luke Kuechly just got more recognition, but he's still one of the best coverage linebackers, off-ball linebackers in the game. And I think Antoine Winfield Jr. Has been really, really dominant. He's probably the best safety in the game right now, if not definitely top 3. And then look no further than the outside, the cornerbacks as well. Carlton Davis can shut down receivers. He's been doing it all year. And surprisingly, Jamel Dean has taken a huge step. He's one of the top 5 ranked corners in the league this year. Teams aren't even testing him. I was talking to him in the locker room last week. He's like, I wish I'd get more than 2 targets a game because he's just playing lockdown coverage. And even when he was targeted against the Steelers, he was there for the quick tackle and it wasn't giving up any extra yards. So I think, they still have some really strong points on the defensive side. Offensive side, obviously, the offensive line is a mess. I think the tight end situation will work itself out. And I think they still have a good running back in Leonard Fournette, who's improved as a pass blocker. He can still churn out some of those tough yards. I think a lot of his production so far has been based on play calling, which I'm sure you guys will see on first down. Look for Byron Leftwich to call multiple runs. Your defense to know it's coming and for them to stop it. It's just what's happened so far this year. And it's a big contention against, media fans alike with the uninspiring play calling. So I think they still have some really solid pieces to build around, but there's some question marks on defensive line, obviously now safety with the injuries, and the offensive line as well.
JT, that was actually a question I wanted to ask you right there, was about game plan. You kind of led to it there with Leonard Fournette. Actually, he's my fantasy running back in both my fantasy leagues this year, so I've paid a little more attention to him, and he seems like he's been kind of a workhorse for you guys. And based on Brady not throwing the ball as well, or really not having the success in the pass game, do you guys look at that as being more of a running attack that maybe, or more of a game plan you guys will have in the future going forward until Brady picks things up? Or coming into Carolina, at least based on our run defense, do you think you're going to see a lot of heavy Leonard Fournette based on your opinion with this?
Gosh, I hope not. And that's nothing against Lenny. I mean, I'm tight with Lenny, and I want him to get all the yards in the world for himself. But at the same time, I think they really need to go back to what this team's bread and butter is. Before this season, they preached balance, balance, balance. We want to be balanced. We want to be a multiple team. We don't want to be just known as a pass first team. And that's what you're good at. You've got Tom Brady. You've got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. You've got these guys who.
What's Godwin's story right now? Is he just dealing with injury, or is he? I mean, he was playing last week, right?
Yeah, he's fine. He's 100% right now. Tom missed him on a few throws with the pressure getting there. He made a spectacular catch where Brady just fitted into a pea-sized hole. I watched the play over and over. I still don't know how that was a completion. Just go on Twitter. You'll find the play. Just put like Brady to Godwin, Unreal Pittsburgh, and it'll pop up. But I mean, he's fine. But I think, with Lenny, they've been utilizing him and kind of because they haven't been able to get the run game going, they've been utilizing him in that short yardage that short yardage situation as quick hits out of the flat and utilizing that short passing game as an extension of the run game, something that Brady did for a while there up in New England with James White and Danny Woodhead and Kevin Falk, and the names go on, Shane Vereen. And they've been that's why he's leading the team right now in receptions, and he was finished third last year on the team in receptions. So they're utilizing him that way, but realistically, that's not exactly how they want to just utilize him. They want to be able to get the guys the ball down the field. They want to utilize him in the running game. It just hasn't transpired, and part of that is because of the O-line play. Now, not all the O-line, obviously. Christian Wirfs is an absolute stud. He's probably the best right tackle in the league at this point over Ryan Ramczyk. And Shaq Mason's been incredible. He's been really good. And even though, Hainsey's just he'll be making his 7th start. Robert Hainsey, their center, taking over for Ryan Jensen. He's been playing really well as well. It's been that left side, and not so much Donovan Smith because he's only on a second game back, but really the rookie, Luke Gedeke. And teams are taking advantage of that. Expect a lot of Derek Brown over him, a lot of mismatches to get Brown on top of him to kind of create pressure in certain situations. Everybody knows the best way to get to Brady and disrupt the passing game is to get up the middle. And so far, Luke Gedeke's been a turnstile for the most part. Now, he's settled down later in the games, but at that point, damage is already done. Brady knows the pressure is coming, or feels the pressure coming, or thinks the pressure is coming. He's having trouble going through all of his reads and progressions, which is why the check down is why you're seeing the check down so quick and often. Yeah. He's not there. They're not allowing plays to develop down the field, and whether it's actually happening or Brady feels it happening or thinks it's happening, that's been an issue. But he's also, again, he's a rookie. He's making his debut in the NFL. He played at Central Michigan, which is the MAC conference. He's going from right tackle to left guard. So position change. And also, just making that switch from the right side to the left side is a completely different body metrics. So the Bucs are doubling down, saying, he's had some issues with some of the best run defenses and defensive tackles in the league, and they're going to stick with him until he gets better. But I don't know how much further they can actually stick with him because he's been a liability, quite honestly.
So, Jason, you have to push back against you a little bit. I believe that Luke Kuechly was the best Mike linebacker of his generation, and number 2, whoever number 2 is, isn't even close. But one of the reasons why I have to do that, JC, is because hanging on to the Panther legends of yesteryear, that's almost all we have right now, man. The Panthers are on the fast track to having the number 1 pick in the draft. We're talking about, are we going to draft C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young? I mean, this offense is absolutely inept right now, and we don't even know who our starting quarterback is going into this Sunday, JC. I can't tell you if it's going to be Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold or P.J. Walker or Jacob Eason, who was elevated off the practice squad. So, I mean, for many Panther fans, it's looking like this is going to be another loss at home for the Panthers. But what matchups are you interested in when you look at this Carolina Panthers team? And is there any area where we might be able to exploit Tampa Bay's defense?
Yeah, I mean, so right now, the only thing I'm looking at is your playmaker, your go-to guy, and that's Christian McCaffrey. I think when you look at that matchup, he's most likely going to be drawing guys like Devin White and Levante David, and I think David can definitely, get after. He's great in coverage, and he's obviously he's got the smarts to be able to recognize plays and make the move. I think White is where you kind of struggle. You saw him last week, it was his responsibility to cover Najee Harris, left him wide open in the flat for an easy touchdown. So I think they can use Christian McCaffrey in a variety of ways. If this run defense can't stop the run early, then, maybe you're looking at him being utilized as a running back as much as he is as a wide receiver. And then the other spot as well is definitely going to be Derek Brown on Luke Gedeke. I think that's another spot where you can definitely have that mismatch and create some different looks and to try to confuse him and get pressure on him. The pass defense has been pretty well. It's the only saving grace, I will say, probably for this Panthers team, You look at it, it's and it's not like it's been great. It's been middle of the pack. You guys rank 17th in the league right now and past the fence. Everything else is in the 20s, whether it's in the high 20s or low 20s. Total offense is dead last. So it's going to be difficult. I even especially if it's PJ Walker, but you know what? I can't even say that because Kenny Pickett was torching this Bucs team, and then Mitch Trubisky came in. So any given Sunday, this could happen. But I think the Bucs are going to watch that game back and said, "This can't happen. This can't happen, and it can't happen again, and it can't happen against the banged up quarterback in Baker or a guy who should be out, who's now going to be a career backup potentially out of the league, and Sam Darnold or PJ Walker, who was just in the in the UFL or XFL 2 years ago.
XFL,
they it can't happen. So I think they'll be able to shut him down. But if anywhere you're going to get after him on offense, it's going to be utilizing matchups like Christian McCaffrey on Devin White. For sure. And then on defense, it's Derek Brown over Luke Gedeke and trying to get pressure up the middle on Tom that way. The little pushback I will give you on Levante David is Luke Kuechly was playing on a team where they made the Super Bowl. They were in the playoffs. The Bucs team sucked. they did not. And I'm not a Bucs fan.
Whoa. We weren't good in 2012 when he joined. 2012 when he joined the team. Like, you guys have won a Super Bowl. Let's not act like it's just been.
Well, Levante Davis is just starting to get his due now. Like, he's starting to get that national record. But you look at his stats and his numbers, and they match up good with Wagner and Kuechly. And some spots they're better than him. So obviously everyone's going to have their own opinions on that. I was just talking to a bunch of people about the top 5 wide receivers. I think the top 4 are set with T.O., Rice, Moss, and Calvin Johnson. But that 5th spot, everyone's got someone different there. Some people have AB. Some people have.
You didn't put Jerry Rice in there?
Yeah, I said Rice.
Oh, okay. All right.
Moss, T.O., and Calvin Johnson. But I mean, some people have AB, some people have Fitz, some people have Marvin Harrison. So I mean, I think that debate between who's the best linebacker in those years out of that draft class, at least, there's a lot of.
All right, we'll let you get off of that subject and onto a different one, maybe a little bit more dicey.
It's still Luke.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not a Panthers pod. I'm not going to convince you guys.
Yeah, man, come on. Yeah.
Is Tom Brady Kevin Lomax a la Keanu Reeves and the Devil Advocate? And did he go visit the devil in New England this past week? How is it that Tom Brady, at whatever age he is, 45 years old, there's all this conversation swirling about like he don't even want to play football right now. It seems like he's comparing time in the NFL to being deployed. He is getting a lot of even Greg said he was like, oh, he's not having a great year or something like, and you look at this and Tom Brady's 5th in passing in the league with 1,650 yards. He has a 67.2 completion rate. He has 8 touchdowns and 1 interception. He's been sacked a little bit more than usual at 9 times already. But at the same time is that if this is bad Tom Brady, I don't want to see good Tom Brady. Is he really struck a deal with the devil? Is that what he's going to do on these like little jaunts? Is he's running the devil's errands at this point?
No, I don't think so at all. I think with Brady, it's everything with Brady does is going to be blown out of proportion. Remember, Brady's Michael Jordan, Brady's Wayne Gretzky. Brady is he's not just the best athlete in his sport of all time. He's also a public figure that is in commercials, that is a household name that everybody knows Tom Brady. No matter where you are in the world, if you mention the name Tom Brady, people are going to know who he is. So there's so much more coverage, and national media for the most part is garbage. Most of it, if you watch any of those syndicated shows, it's all clickbait stuff. They're trying to get headlines. They're trying to get people to view, and those back and forth discussions that some of these people have are just, they're not there every day. They're not in the building. They don't see what's really going on. So I don't think any of that, like I said, any of that off the field stuff has anything to do with anything. I think Brady just has developed a routine with him and Alex Guerrero where he knows how to take care of his body. He knows how to train his body. He knows how to recover with his, the best steps for recovery, and that's what's led him to have such a prolific and long career. I mean, you mentioned some of the stats that he's currently sitting at, and some other ones. He's 10th in EPA, he's 9th in EPA plus CPOE, 7th in PFF passing grade. He's tied for second in big time throws with 12, 12th in BTT rate, first in TWP rate. Like, he's still doing a lot of things, and while his numbers are down, those big throws, he's only got a big throw rate of 4.8. It's down all over the place. Everyone this year is down to 4.9. It's just the big plays aren't happening as much this year, and it's not just Brady. It's a bunch of other quarterbacks and offenses around the league that just aren't hitting their stride as well. So, I think, like I said, I don't think this offense is by any means dead in the water, dead to rights, and this is what you're getting. I think they're going to be able to turn it around. They usually play their best ball in late November, early into December, into the playoffs when they're healthy. I mean, last year, I think you look at that game against the Rams, if they have different players available, if Chris Godwin's there, if AB doesn't go topless a couple of games prior, if Tristan Wirfs is in at right tackle, I think you're looking at a different outcome. The Bucs are now hosting the 49ers in Tampa Bay. And then, if they win that, they're playing the Bengals. And I think that those two games are definitely winnable. And maybe you're talking about back-to-back Super Bowl champions. So injuries are going to play a huge part in that, as they always do for every team, and every team goes through them. So that's no excuse, but I just don't think this early season struggles that we've seen from the Bucs. And remember, besides that Chiefs game, which they came back and nearly notched it back up, they only lost by 10 points. They only lost by 2 points to the Packers, and they only lost 2 points to the Steelers. Now, granted, they should have beat that Steelers team for sure.
By a bazillion.
The Packers game, Mike Evans was out. He was suspended. And if they got Mike Evans, I think that's a different game. But, part of the problem has been slow starts on both offense and defense. And they need to turn that around. They need to turn it around quick. And then on offense, especially play calling needs to change.
Tom Brady is famously known for the tuck rule that everybody says they treat Tom Brady differently. Look, he's had rules made for him. Will there be a rule made this offseason to review roughing the passer penalties? Because the Atlanta Falcons, who were getting stomped by you guys, it felt like early on in that game, 21-0 or something like that, make it a game at 21-14. I feel like get to Tom Brady on a big play, and there's a roughing the passer call for what ultimately everybody made fun of for the next 2 days as just being the Tom Brady effect. Some people tried to justify where the ref was at and his angle and some different things like that. But some people are saying that we should, that the NFL should be able to review roughing the passer calls. Do you think that play will lead to that discussion?
No. And it's certainly not just that play. You look at the very next night, Chris Jones got called for it. You look at this weekend, there was some questionable calls for it as well, including in last night's game. It's completely, the NFL is trying to, listen, we all know about it. You were just talking to me about fantasy. This is a fantasy football driven league right now. It is bringing in hundreds of dollars. This is a gambling league right now. It is bringing millions and hundreds of dollars to the NFL. It's bringing notoriety. It's getting more fans. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to protect offensive skill players. My vote is everyone normalize IDPs in your fantasy leagues. Normalize IDPs instead of defenses. And that way they're going to protect the defensive players too, because you need them for fantasy points. So normalize IDPs in fantasy. But I think if you look at it and specifically, I hear this all the time. Oh, Brady gets all the calls. Brady's 16th in the league. He hasn't had a roughing the passer call since 2020. And before that, it was like 29th. Like, he does not get roughing the passer calls as much as a lot of people think he does. He ranked 16th since 2020 in roughing the passer penalty. Since 2010, roughing the passer penalties is called on 2.1% of the times Brady's been sacked.
How many sweep the leg penalties does he get?
Yeah, I mean, come on. You want to take the shots. But I'm just saying, like, it's a common misconception. Because it's Brady, it gets so much notoriety and so much attention. And I think I'm with you guys. I think that call was bogus. I think the call against Chris Jones was bogus. I think the call last night in that Broncos game was bogus. But that's what we're trending to. That is, that's what we're trending to is Pro Bowl type level play when it comes to the quarterbacks, because that's the moneymaker, that's the bread and butter, and that's what brings people, that's what brings asses to the stands, that what gets people into fantasy, that brings more fans in and more spectators, because everyone wants to watch the football game to see how their fantasy's doing. At this point, the NFL's audience is 50% female. There's no denying that. Females are in this sport now, and largely because of fantasies is one big part of why they're in this sport. And they're going to protect their assets at all costs, no matter how much defensive guys like myself and around the league hate it. It's just going to be the situation that it's in.
Yeah. So, JC, this would probably be my final question for tonight. I appreciate the time that you spent with us. My question to you is very short and sweet. Do you expect Tampa to be active before the trade deadline, and players or kinds of players might you expect that they would go for?
Yeah, I think they're going to take a look. Absolutely. I mean, anyone who's available that can help them, they're definitely going to take a look at. I think they'll be active potentially in the Odell Beckham Jr. sweepstakes. One of the things he's always wanted to do is play with Tom Brady, and Tom Brady's been, they've both been very vocal about wanting to play with each other. If this is Brady's last season, this is his last attempt or last chance potentially at playing with Brady. So that's something that, and I just gave you facts, Josh. I mean, you're Josh. I'm a fellow Josh, but I just gave you facts. That's something that they've always talked about. But, I think looking potentially guard, and this shouldn't even get put up on screen. Come on, guys. You're better than that.
I scroll through them. Sometimes I forget to even read what's on. That's on me.
No, I'm just kidding.
Pet fans, you understand.
Yeah, I know. I'm just messing. Like, this one's crazy too.
Yeah,
anyways, but I think maybe I think maybe left guard, they could look if someone comes available. The thing about this is where the Bucs need help right now. No one's trying to get rid of those players. No one's trying to offer. You're not getting good players for nothing, and that's what Jason Light always says is you have to have somebody who wants to make a deal with you and is willing to accept the right assets that you're willing to give up. The Bucs are already out a 4th round pick next year. They're getting a 5th in return from compensatory picks. They're also getting an extra 7th, so they're kind of making up that with a 5th and 7th. You can get back into the late 4th, so they're kind of making that up. But at the same time, it's got to be someone who help. I think the quickest fix for them right now is to go out and see what's going on with Eric Flowers. I don't know why he's not signed yet, and there may be a reason for that. But I think he's a guy who graded out at over 70 overall as a left guard in PFF last year, and I think that he could be an upgrade on that offensive line. The defensive line, there's still Ndamukong Suh out there. And one of the biggest reasons he's not signed is because he's a businessman. Like, he's a businessman. He wants to get paid what he wants to get paid, and I don't think anyone's willing to pay him that right now. But if Hicks is going to miss more time, I think that would be a good spot to check. But I think the biggest thing that they could get at this point of the season and later, even after the trade deadline, is getting Gronk back. I mean, I think it's still a possibility, even though he just joined Fox's countdown. He's been staying in shape. He's in football shape. I think that would be the biggest thing. They're missing him on 3rd downs right now tremendously. And you look at this Bucs team right now, they've been struggling on 3rd downs. Right now, they're 31 of 82 on 3rd down conversions, which is very poor. And then in the red zone, they're struggling in the red zone as well. So those two areas are huge for Gronk with his body, his catch radius, his control, and his ability to just run over players. So, I think that would be the biggest improvement that this Bucs team could get. But again, Odell Beckham Jr. is a name I'm keeping an eye on. And if they feel like, especially if injuries happen more or pile up, or depending on Logan Ryan's injury, if they feel like they need to add at safety, maybe they can take a look and maybe, reach out to the Patriots. I don't know what Jabril Peppers is doing or anything like that, but he's down the depth chart line there. Or they can, kind of target that position as well. So I don't know. I feel like a move is probably coming. They just put Logan Ryan on injured reserve and released someone from their practice squad, Justin School, who's a tackle. They didn't make any immediate announcements. They could just promote someone from the practice squad, or they could, bring someone in from the outside, a la Eric Flowers, or make a trade. So I definitely know a move is coming, or at least at least 2 to 3 moves. If they do promote someone from the practice squad, then they have 2 practice squad openings. So there's definitely a couple moves coming down the line. I just don't know what those are going to be. And I think it's a wait and see approach on how they can improve this team, because they're always looking.
So I obviously this past offseason was a roller coaster for Bucs fans, with Tom Brady retiring, then unretiring. Now that we're almost 7 weeks in, hindsight almost makes, at least from the outside perspective, it almost makes it look like Tom Brady coming back hurts the future of the Bucs. And I mean that in a couple of ways. If there is a guy on the roster now that's going to take his place, he's not getting those reps in game. He's not getting real valuable, on the field snaps. If the answer is not on the team, which we can all assume that this is his last year, right? Then you guys are going to be probably right now. I don't think, and you may have an opinion on this. It doesn't look like the Bucs are going to be world champions. I'm not going to put Tom Brady out at all. Like, obviously things can go wrong, but it certainly does not look like a world beater team just yet. How do you, now that the season has gone the way that it is, do you look back on Brady's unretirement positively or negatively, or does that really not even concern you at this point in time?
Well, we're only 6 games in, so 3-3 is not the end of the world. I mean, they could go on a run, still lose 2 games, and end up 12-5 and be fine. And I think they're going to win the division, so they're definitely guaranteeing a spot in the dance. And if they're healthy when that time comes around, I think they've shown that they can answer the call. So I wouldn't call them out, especially in the NFC. The NFC is in shambles right now. The Eagles look good, but are they for real? Are they, how does is that going to continue? The Cowboys, enough said. The Giants, I think Brian Daboll's got them playing great football, but let's see if they can sustain that throughout the entire year. I mean, just a few years ago, we saw the Steelers go on that, incredible run where they were undefeated for like 12 games. Then they were knocked out early in the playoffs. So that's one of those situations. Green Bay looks in shambles. The Rams look in shambles. Minnesota looks pretty good, but Kirk Cousins playing in primetime in the playoffs. I'll take my chances with Kirk Cousins playing primetime in the playoffs. So I still think they have a good chance of potentially making the Super Bowl. Now, depending on what team they're going against, if they're faced up against the Chiefs or the Bills or anything, that's a tall task. But again, any given Sunday, the Steelers just beat the Bucs, So
right.
Anything can happen, and if you have a good enough game plan, you can make the adjustments to. That's one of the things. The Bucs have been terrible at making adjustments, especially on the offensive side. So they got to get that down. But as far as the Brady situation, Kyle Trask isn't ready. He's not. He's a guy notoriously sat in high school, sat in college. He's making a difficult transition to the pro game from the offense that he was in last year. He pretty much spent the offseason learning different dropbacks and situations like that. So I think he needs at least another year. And if you look at it, I think Bucs fans have to be thrilled that Brady came back for one reason, because they're looking at Baker Mayfield. So he ends up with the Panthers, and we know how that's going right now. So, but I think, you got Tom Brady, you're always in it. You look at having him back, you probably wouldn't have gotten guys like Ryan Jensen to recommit, Leonard Fournette to recommit. Maybe, even I think Chris Godwin was coming back regardless, but I don't know if you get Russell Gage here. I don't know if you get guys like, I don't know if they're aggressive to get Shaq Mason in here with a trade. I don't know if they're aggressive enough to put this team together that is a win now team. And this team, the way they structured most of those contracts with Gage and Godwin and Carlton Davis and Jensen, those are 3-year deals. So this team is a win now. It's a Super Bowl winning team now, when healthy, when executing properly. I don't think we can say, anything against that. If they're healthy and executing properly, and the way that we know they can, this team is one of the best in the NFL. They've got the talent across the board. So I think Brady coming back was definitely great for them. for this year and also going forward to being able to lock those guys up and put yourself in position. And next year we'll see. I mean, do they roll with Blaine Gabbert? I don't know. Do they want to go with Kyle Trask? Do they maybe package some picks to move up in the first round and grab a quarterback? This is a very quarterback heavy draft. As you guys know, scouting, I'm sure all of them right now. There's a lot of good guys out there, even guys who can be had later in the mid to late first round. Or has this team had that taste of the national spotlight, the taste of winning a championship, being in the playoffs? And do they try to make a splash trade for a veteran? Is Dak enamored with Cooper Rush? I mean, we say that now, but he gave Bledsoe a huge contract and Tony Romo came in. He gave Tony Romo a huge contract and Dak came in. Jerry Jones is the weirdest owner in football. He's so fickle, he can make those decisions, and maybe they swing the fence and get a Dak. Maybe someone else pops up that we don't even think is available, and they're able to land that guy. And now they have they have a quarterback in place there. So there's definitely, what if the Raiders, they just recommitted to Carr, but what if they get the second pick, and do you not take a chance on that generational talent? What if Justin Fields becomes available, and in a better offense, he can produce better? There's so many different variables there. I think re-signing Brady for this year, getting the cast of characters back, signing them to long-term deals to keep this team in a window where they can still win championships and still compete at a high level was the right decision to make ultimately. Long-winded. All my answers are long-winded, but yeah.
No, you're good. Well, listen, we appreciate you so much for coming on and talking about this matchup this Sunday. Why don't you go ahead and tell our viewers where they can find you, where they can find your work, and how they can get at you online?
Yeah, definitely. Pewter Report is where all my work is going to be at Pewter Report on Twitter, Pewter Report TV on YouTube, and then pewterreport.com. My Twitter handle is right there at JC Allen NFL. Follow me. Listen, I'm a football fan first and foremost. I love learning about different teams, the NFL in general. So if the team I cover, the team I root for, were just gone off the face of the earth, I'd still be a football fan. I'd still want to learn as much as I can about different teams. So if you're like that and you want to learn about the Bucs, keep in touch with the Bucs, what's going on, and just be a well-rounded football fan. Follow me. I'm your one-stop shop for everything. We've got great, awesome coverage. I've got a great show on Tuesdays. I sit down with a Bucs player every week. This week was Tristan Wirfs, and he actually was talking about Brian Burns. He's like, Brian Burns, man, he presents a problem. He's fast. He's like, I know he's going to try to put a spin move on me at one point. So, I mean, that's a matchup that they have a lot of respect for. I think maybe see a jersey swap this week. I told him, like, hey, they're fire sailing over there. So he may not be there at the end of the season. I don't think they move him, but just in case, you might want to get that jersey swap with him. So, I think that this is going to be a fun game. I think the Bucs can get right. I'm not at a score prediction yet. I definitely think the Bucs win probably by at least 10. But it's going to be interesting to watch. But that's where you can find me. That's where you can follow all of our work, everything at Pewter Report. I appreciate you guys having me on for sure.
Yeah, man, we thank you so much for coming on.